Welcome, everybody, to part two of our panel on operational challenges brought to you by Pull the Chute and their partners. So this is a five-part panel discussion that we're bringing you today. The last panel we talked about was marketing challenges. It was great. Hope that you all got a chance to hear that. Today, we're going to be talking about system challenges, which is a big deal in any type of business, large or small. In the new year, we will be discussing sales challenges and other business issues for you. We hope you enjoy these discussions and find them useful. We enjoy bringing them to you. So let's get started. I'm your host, Jana Landry. I'm a communication coach, but I want you to meet the rest of our panels. So everybody introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. Jeff, let's start with you.
All right. Thanks, Jan. Appreciate it. My name is Jeff Cecil. I am the founder and CEO of Pull the Chute, and we are a business executive and leadership coaching firm here out of the Nashville area.
Norma.
I'm Norma Shirk with Corporate Compliance Risk Advisor. We offer human resources consulting for small and mid-sized businesses.
And next we have Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Lockow. I own Performa PSP. We are a second generation marketing firm that specializes in printed materials, decorated apparel, and promotional items.
That's great. So here is our awesome panel today. Today we're going to talk about systems. Systems help you run your business. They can help you stay organized, and if properly set up, they can help you nurture leads, which we all know is very important. We all kind of go by leads, right? They also, however, come with some challenges, right? Today, we're going to find out what systems our panelists are using, what challenges they have, how they've dealt with them, and how they've overcome them, which is a big takeaway. So about this, Jeff, systems do you use to run business? What do you like? What have you found?
So, we're a small business firm here. I started, believe it or not, building my website using Wix. I really enjoy it. It's kind of a plug and play platform. And then all their add-on stuff, their CRM system, their email functionality, their drip campaigns, all integrates in really well. So, a lot of people like to use the bigger names like HubSpot and Salesforce and all these other things. I kept it simple. I just, we kind of used Wix and we find it pretty much does everything we needed to do, especially for a small business. Now, of course, if we got bigger, I'm sure I'd have to switch over to something a little more robust. But for now, it works.
That's great. Norma, what about you? What have you found that works for your systems?
Well, right now what we're using is an online database called Clio. And it's actually designed for small law firms and solo practitioners. It was recommended to me by a friend who's a solo practitioner. So it's worked okay. It's more about tracking information than really the end of it, which is the prospecting and so on. That could be more robust. So I think if my company grows much beyond the size it's at now, we'll probably need to also look at something that's a little more user-friendly in terms of prospecting.
That's great. Thank you. Mark, what about you?
Performa actually has developed a proprietary system platform that's for us to use. Started about 2-3 years ago on it, and they've really come a long way. And that is what we mainly use for keeping track of everything.
So how are your systems working then for business? I mean, do you feel like this is, I know that we just discussed this, Norma, where you said you might have to change your system as you grow. Jeff, you like this system is good for you as you grow, or do you feel like you might need something different?
It is working well. They are constantly making updates and changes to the system. Probably the one complaint I would have is that at times the system runs extremely slow because there's so many people on it, which they are working on getting that fixed as well. But that's probably the main complaint I would have about it.
Mm-hmm. I know for what I do, Salesforce is great in my opinion as a strong CRM if it's a large company and there's a lot of follow-up that's needed. The issue with Salesforce is that it's big and it is time consuming and there's a lot of different frames and different ways to dig into it. So for some of the larger businesses that I deal with, I think it's a great one, but I also like your idea, Jeff, of Wix and something that's a little bit simpler for that small business owner who doesn't need to dig that deeply into all of the minutia in business, which is time consuming. It can take a lot of time.
Well, and
So
the
what
other thing too is that there's so much data that gets collected.
Yes.
That sometimes keeping that data clean when you're working with a Salesforce or a HubSpot is really, I find it really, I've worked with both and I find it, overwhelming to try and keep
Yes.
that because there's so much data it collects. I'd much rather work with something simpler, like you were saying with the Wix, and I enjoy the Wix. It's easy. So, and that's one of the things. I don't want to have to spend hours and hours and hours learning something. When something's very intuitive, I can just go with it.
Well, that brings us to our next question, people, right? What has been your biggest challenge and how have you dealt with it? In my situation, a large CRM like that is time consuming. And when you're in sales or in recontacting your client base like that on a regular basis, anything that's taking up too much time is taking you away from dealing with your clients and having a relationship with your clients, which is, as we know, one of the most important things in business. So what about other challenges? Anybody else? Norma, what have you noticed have been challenges for you?
What I've found is what I'm using is a little more labor intensive than I realized. It could really stand a bit more automation, or maybe it's just my lack of tech skills that are doing it. But I find it extremely, it's like drudgery to have to go in and like enter everything. And it doesn't really, even within their site, it doesn't really populate over to other parts of it. So each new section, you have to re-enter all the data, which is tedious to me. So that was not something I expected when I took it on. At the time, I thought, oh, okay. I was more interested in tracking what I was doing for clients as opposed to getting more clients and retaining the ones I had. So if I had it to do over, I'd probably look at a different platform, but now I've got enough data in it. It's a little more labor intensive than I expected.
Jeff, what about you?
Well, I think for us, the biggest challenges that we're struggling with is not so much the system, but the messaging that we're using within the system to reach out to people. I feel like since the pandemic, everyone is kind of, instead of trying to build this relationship, they're all trying to just sell, and everyone's getting so tired of that. So one of the things that we're struggling with, and that I think we've actually kind of broke through a little bit recently, is what is the messaging that gets people to say, hey, look, this isn't a sales call. This is hey, let's get to know each other, and is there a way we can help each other? Kind of a message, and that seems to be coming across much better. And so as we do these, we do email campaigns, we do LinkedIn campaigns, things of that nature. And as we do these outreach kind of pieces, I think that's the key, is to get them. Obviously the goal is to get them to click on things and to hopefully say, yeah, I'm a little bit interested, so that we can start to build those leads, and they're create a warm lead at least until they're ready to buy whatever it is you're selling. But I think that's our biggest challenge. And I think, again, just a lot of A/B testing, seeing what people are responding to, is a key to solving that challenge.
I also think that the accuracy of your data is very important. And that's a challenge as well, because bringing up this pandemic issue, Jeff, as you have, what I have noticed is a lot of my contacts have changed. People just simply have moved positions.
Yeah.
They've moved within their company. They've left their company, and there's somebody else new handling whomever it is that we all need to reach out to for what we're offering as our goods and services. So it's important to also have some kind of a system where you can go in easily and change that contact, or make notes, or reference changes within that specific company as you then reach back out to them. Because if you continue to hit up the same person and they're gone via email, let's say, rather than a phone call, and email, let's face it, is our number one mode of communication these days. a lot of times if there's no answer back, you don't know if you're actually even reaching out to the correct person. So I think the accuracy is extremely important. What about you, Mark? Have you found that to be the case lately with this pandemic?
Yes. Anytime I get an email that's bounced back, or if they say they've moved to a new company, I make sure that I make the updates in my system right away for that. And then I also try and reach out to them at whatever new company they're with to see if there's any way I can be of assistance for them to make their job easier in their new position.
Yeah, I think that's great. Jeff, what about
You
you?
know,
What are you thinking?
It's interesting, Janet. So I literally this morning read an article that came out that said it was the stats about the Great Resignation, and it was like 20 unbelievable stats, right? Here's the unbelievable stat in my mind. 4 million people are quitting their jobs every month.
That's incredible. That's so huge. Has that ever
Right?
even happened in history in the last 75 years?
No.
Yeah, no, right? And November of 2021 was the biggest month ever. 4.5 million people left their jobs.
Wow,
Right?
that's
So
an
people are
incredible.
moving all over the place.
Yes, yes, they
And
are.
so one of the challenges for all of us now, as Mark hit on it and you asked, is how do we keep up with that data as
Yes.
they keep moving? You know, and so I think part of the answer to that is obviously monitoring, you know, your outreach. You know, like we use an email system that we send out to our contacts that at some point have said, yes, we'd like to get information from you. And all of a sudden they're not open, you know, where they were open it for 2 or 3 months. Now they're not. You know, now you got to go into LinkedIn and say, okay, are they still where they were originally, or are they moved? You know, and it just takes time. It's hard, but I think it's like you brought it up. I think it's an important factor, though. We have to make time to do that. You know, we need to. You know, I always tell people, look, you know, schedule an hour a week in your calendar, and you know, pick something. And let's just pick systems in this case, and focus on cleaning up your data for an hour a week for a month.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you won't. You know.
Well, and I'd like to jump in and add, I've noticed with LinkedIn, when people change jobs, they may be a little bit slow about updating that in their social media, particularly LinkedIn, which is what I use a lot.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult to track them that way. Historically, I've always tried to have at least 2 contacts at a company so that if one, you know, moves on, which happens all the time, particularly at smaller companies, then at least I have one, if you will, good email address for somebody or phone number. But I have been reduced to actually having to call like their general office number and say, here's who I was dealing with. Who's doing that now?
Right. Well, it's interesting you brought up LinkedIn. I'm sorry, Jenna, real quick, if it's okay, because I think that has become like the place to connect and network and, you know, and all that stuff. So I'm surprised that people take so long. And you're right, though, they are. They're taking a long time to update their profiles as to where they are. A. B. There is a system that I used for a while with LinkedIn that actually does outreach for you automatically until the point when they kind of come back to you and say, yeah, I'd like to learn more. And then you personally take it over. Great system, by the way. So, you know, for our people that are listening, if you're ever looking for something to help you with LinkedIn, there's several of those out there that will do that outreach for you. Mark, actually, I think you used one for a while. You and I were talking about it.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, in my opinion, media outreach places for professionals, for business. You know, we've got our Facebook and our Insta and all these other platforms that are really more socially driven, but LinkedIn seems to have it down. Now, on that note, I will say that LinkedIn is not easy. It is also not an easy site. You have to research it. You have to understand how to work it. You know, there are limitations and such, but I think it's excellent to connect business to business. For B2B, I think it's very good. There are a lot of ways that you can really work it to your advantage. I know for me, I think there's, like you said, Norma, I think it's very important to have a phone number and to reach out, especially in this last 18 months, as we've gone through a big change in our nation with just workforce in general and how we do work. We have people working from home. We have people working in offices. We have, you know, we have all these ways to contact people. I think your database and that connectivity is very important. And, you know, I'm a communication gal. So my biggest thing is get on the phone, call them, find out who you need to reach out to. Correct the data as much as you can as you go along. I love your suggestion, Jeff, where you take an hour for like a month, an hour a week just for a month, and really try to clean it up. But my suggestion is always call. Just call whomever that phone number is that you have contact with, because I do find that once we do have a human on the other line, they're going to be as helpful as they can. Once you get somebody. Now, the challenge sometimes is to get somebody, right? Instead of like, please press 1 for, then press 2 for, it's like, okay, well, I don't really know which number to press. Here's a little trick, guys. Press 0. Sometimes it takes you to the opportunity.
Yeah.
Isn't it
the operator? Yeah.
To me, those phone systems are the worst systems in the world.
Oh,
They drive me nuts.
They're just
Like, I just want a person.
They're horrendous. Yeah. But yeah, phone calls for me are always great. Here's another little secret: the competition. I like to call my competition and say, "Hey, what's the database you use, or what's the CRM you like?" Because oftentimes a similar business will, they'll tell you what they use, and they'll tell you if they've had success with it or not. And that's another little. It's also an opportunity, guys, to network with your competition, sometimes partnerships and alliances. So anyway, okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10. What would you rate the accuracy of your database? That's a big one. 1 to 10. Yeah.
I would probably say
6. Yeah.
I'd say 6. It's a safe
Yeah.
number. Yeah. It's nowhere near 10. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. Mine's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. Mark, what about
Somewhere
you?
between 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm probably upwards of an 8 now.
Oh, wow.
Good for you.
It used to be that the data was pretty bad, but I try and make it a point now, as soon as I know that there's something that's changed, that I update it right away. And a lot of my clients, they text me with questions and orders and things. So I actually have a lot of personal cell phone numbers, which comes in handy if you can get your hands on it, because then if they do move on, you've got a way to keep in touch with them, and you can find out what the reason is that they're not there anymore. Did something happen within the company, or was it of their own fruition that they decided to move on? And then you might decide whether you even want to continue to work with the company they were at before or not too, if there was something internally that was an issue.
Oh, that's an excellent point, actually.
Yes, that is.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah, it's
That's
funny.
good.
System. I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Jeff.
Just the systems are, Mark. You got an 8. That to me, that's like amazing.
Yes.
But that to me, that's all about commitment, and just like you said, every time you see a change, you go make the change. I get way too lazy. I'm like, I put it on a piece of paper, I write it somewhere, I'm going to do it later, and then I forget.
Well, and interesting on that note, Jeff, some of the systems don't allow you a lot of note taking, or a lot, any kind of a frame where you can write notes, copious notes, as I say. And notes, sometimes the more detail you can get into, the better the better your sales is going to be, or the better the relationship is going to be the next time you contact this client. And that's very important, to have some kind of, I believe, to have some kind of personal connection to a client. So I think some of these systems could open up that frame, or open up that opportunity to take detailed notes within your data, so you can then reach out with something specific for them.
Yeah, I think that I challenged. So I had a client, I'm going to say 4 years ago, somewhere in there. I challenged their account directors to tell me 3 pieces of personal information about their clients.
Mm-hmm.
None of them could do it.
Right.
Right. And then I challenged them to find 3 pieces of personal information, and they struggled to do it, but they did it. But,
yes.
what it did, and they put it in the database, by the way. So that was the cool part, right? So as things moved around, everyone knew, maybe they were married, maybe their birthday, maybe how many kids they had, where they lived, whatever it is you find out when you talk to people. But it turned out to create a really good client retention piece, because now we learned personal things about them. And we kept all that in our system, right? So we just run a little report, say, hey, do we know when someone's birthday is this month? Each month, and then we'd make sure that we said happy birthday to them, or happy anniversary, or something like that. I think that's where systems really become effective.
Well, we all know that this is all relationship driven. Any kind of business is really important. I agree. Norma, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I agree. I probably don't do as good a job getting those personal details, but for me, I'm a storyteller. So knowing the details, I may not remember anybody's name, but I'll remember some of the details. I mean, for example, several years back, I was working for a company at the time before I set up my own business, and I had seen an article in the Nashville Business Journal about a company that had moved from Texas, and they did some sort of woodworking. And lo and behold, we were prospecting, and I walked into their conference room and I went, "Oh, wow, I remember you guys because I've seen this piece of furniture before, this tabletop." And they were kind of surprised that anybody remembered that little article from years
Oh,
before.
wow.
But that's how I do it. So when I do actually remember to get something a little more personal about a client, I do try to enter it in my notes because I can look back at that, and that's how I sort of like place them in the context.
Mhm.
In literature, it's like reading Russian literature. There's way too
Yeah.
many people and they all have names that sound alike. But then you remember that, oh, in this scene, this is what the guy did. Okay, now I know who we're talking about.
Mhm, mhm. Well, I'm all about storytelling, Norma. I think that is absolutely the key in relationship development. I really do. What who they're dealing with and what the backstory is. Especially now, it's changed so much in the last 5 years. People always want a story, you know.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Well, does anybody else have anything to add to this great panel about systems and how we use them and how they can help us in our business?
For me, what I'd like to let people realize is, look, you don't have to go out and buy expensive systems to run your business. There's a bunch of lower cost, sometimes free systems that can do the job for you. Asana is one of those where, you can use it. It's free up to a certain, level of use.
Mhm.
Different things. Even HubSpot actually is free up to a certain number of people that you put in the database, that they offer a free version. So look around, look at those systems, find the free versions of things, or the lower cost of things. And until you get to a certain level where you really need extensive types of systems, I would say just keep using the ones that are more cost effective for your business, and that's going to work for you. I mean, again, Asana is our task manager. We use Wix for our CRM and for even our email. So I don't have multiple. I don't use like MailChimp for one thing, and so that's one of the reasons I liked it, because everything was in one. But I think to me that's the key to the success.
I think that's great. That's a great place to end, Jeff. So we'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today. Systems are an important part of running your business. It's important to get it right. We hope we've brought you some information about that. As a reminder, these panels are brought to you by Pull the Chute and their partners. We do these panels as a way to provide information that you as business owners might be able to use. Email us if you have any specific subjects that you want us to address. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, either by email, info@pullthechute.net, or visit our partner page, and you can reach out to any one of us individually. We're all listed there. Finally, we will be hosting another panel in the middle of January. We'll actually do a couple more, and we will update you on those dates. We hope you can join us. Until then, please stay safe, be healthy. Happy holidays from your partners here at Pull the Chute. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye, everybody.